Turkish citizens living abroad cast their ballot in the presidential runoff between President Erdogan and challenger Kemal Kilicdaroglu. Could Turkish voters in places like Germany, the US, and the Balkans make a difference? I'll break it up down here on Straight Talk. Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Ayşe Süberker. Nearly 1.5 million Turkish citizens living overseas have cast their ballot in the presidential runoff that will take place this Sunday. Long lines could be seen at polling stations across Germany, home to the largest overseas Turkish population. Votes cast in several Balkan countries and across Europe have already been sent to Türkiye, as most overseas polls are set to close on Wednesday. With voter turnout in the first round hitting record highs both at home and abroad, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan came out with a 4-point lead over his closest challenger, Kemal Kilicdaroglu, who he will face on May 28. Third-place finisher Sinan Ogan formally endorsed President Erdogan's People's Alliance after holding talks on Friday. Erdogan thanked Ogan for his support but shut down claims that the endorsement was secured as part of a bargain. The president also said that the repatriation of Syrian refugees were part of their discussions. Currently, more than 3.5 million Syrian refugees are in Türkiye, but Ankara says plans are underway to repatriate many of them back to Syria. And to further discuss Türkiye's presidential runoff, joining me now from Ankara is Mehmet Akif Kireççi. He is a professor of international relations at the Social Sciences University of Ankara. And Yücel Acar is a researcher at SETA. Also from Istanbul, Zuhal Mert Uzuner. She is an associate professor at Marmara University. A warm welcome to you all, and thanks for joining me on Straight Talk. So, Zuhal, let me begin with you. Türkiye's presidential elections is now headed for a second round after neither candidate passed the 50% threshold. How will this process play out?
When we look at the process, it's so obvious that both sides try to present their standpoint, and we see the prominent candidates in the competition. And as a result of this, competing the process, we see two prominent leaders stayed as the most important candidates, Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Kemal Kilicdaroglu. But as the result, we have now very important result. It shows a very knife edge, the result of this, the proportional distribution of the votes. Actually, when we remember all this, the public polls before the elections, we were expecting a second round, the time, the elections, the runoff. But at the end, this kind of result, the knife edge result, was not expected. So this is something very maybe unexpected result for all the political analysts. But we see that the high level of turnout shows us that the second round will be much more important to see the reflection of public desires, public will of the people.
So, Mehmet Akif, how do you see the current political landscape in the country?
Well, it's a very interesting election. I think the Turkish people went to this election, or the political system went to this election under the premise that as if the parliamentary system is still operating, but it's not. So we now have a presidential system which requires perhaps two major blocks and one candidate assurance over the other will be through the 50% threshold. So the main opposition leader, Kilicdaroglu, was able to secure about 46% of the votes, and that between the two candidates, there's about 2.5 million votes. So I think in the second runoff elections, the current odds indicate that Erdogan will sort of record a victory over his rival Kilicdaroglu. How do I say that, or why do I say that? Is that because in the third candidate, which is Sinan Ogan, who was supported by the ATA alliance, what international media calls ultra-nationalistic votes he was able to attract for himself, gathered more than 5% of the votes. I think it's a very important level of support for himself as a new political figure in the Turkish political system. So the point is that who is going to win this 5% of the votes that Sinan Ogan was able to get for himself? And the interesting division occurred within the ATA alliance is that Ümit Özdağ, who was the main force behind Sinan Ogan's, who actual leader of the Victory Party, is now negotiating with Kılıçdaroğlu, the main opposition leader. And then Sinan Ogan already expressed his support for the incumbent president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Yes.
So the question is, how much of his votes actually will follow him? That's the question. So I think his followers are up for grab for two candidates. Sinan Ogan already expressed his support for Erdogan, and Ümit Özdağ is leaning more towards Kılıçdaroğlu. We'll see.
So, Yücel, what do you think? The third place finisher, Sinan Ogan, as Mehmet Akif mentioned, picked up more than 5%, and he just yesterday endorsed President Erdogan for the presidency. So, will this have an impact?
Definitely, it will have a very positive effect on President Erdogan's second round election. Although in the first round nobody secured more than 50%, still there are many reasons to think that it is a great achievement on behalf of President Erdogan, not only on behalf of President Erdogan, also on behalf of the People's Alliance, because they secured the majority in the parliament, which is mostly unexpected, actually. Most people expected that Erdogan would be quite successful again, but the majority in the parliament is quite significant as a result of the first round. So, in the second round, of course, it's a great support again to the existing candidate, as a candidate, President Erdogan. Although he doesn't need such, significant supports anymore, I think. Still, there is a great chance that Erdogan, without the support of Ogan, still in a very, significant position to win the second round. But still, this support is also important.
So, Zuhal, President Erdogan, after Sinan Ogan expressed his support to President Erdogan's People's Alliance, the president was clear in saying that there was no bargain made for Ogan's endorsement. So what was he trying to signal here?
When we look at the supporting groups to Sinan Ogan, it is so obvious that the discourses are so similar with Justice and Development Party and Recep Tayyip Erdogan. So we see the given importance to the sensitivities underlined in the election process by Erdogan. So this is close, let's say, the similarities in between these two, the leader profile, actually give us something very important, a hint about the probable result of the second round, because it is very obvious that the votes given to Sinan Ogan underlines these sensitivities related with nationalist priorities, which were not satisfied by the competing alliance. So Sinan Ogan's support is important in such kind of knife edge election, yes, but how much Sinan Ogan has capability to lead this amount of vote to a bloc is very important question, and it is so questionable because we know that the votes given to Sinan Ogan is much more reactive, much more protesting, maybe not feeling so close both let's say the leading bloc. That's why we can see that only a very small portion of that vote can go to Recep Tayyip Erdogan because of this priorities, sensitivities, that is enough actually to win the election for Recep Tayyip Erdogan. From that approach, that explanations of Sinan Ogan is not so unexpected, I think, because if Sinan Ogan decides to say, okay, we are coming closer to this the competing nation coalition, most probably the voters will not follow him because his profile is nationalist and has so many sensitivities, somehow closer to people's coalition. So it was not unexpected, I think.
So, Mehmet Akif, another presidential candidate, we know, Muharram İnce, withdrew just days before the election. So, which candidate do you think his supporters plus Sinan Ogan's supporters will be voting for? Do you have any idea, or you're just making predictions here?
I think that's a very good question. First of all, for Muharram İnce, he started off with some 13% threshold, but with constant severe criticism he received from CHP supporters, from especially social media, lots of plots against him, forced him to withdraw from this rivalry. What I assumed was that if Muharram İnce continued as he was doing, and then as a third candidate, he several times expressed his position. If he is going to lose, if he's not going to be one of the two candidates, he is going to support Kılıçdaroğlu, meaning the opposition candidate in the runoff elections. So, but the severe criticism, constant criticism, which he got from CHP supporters, forced him to withdraw. Therefore, sort of a potential bloc who would support İnce and through İnce, Kılıçdaroğlu would be deleted by CHP in a very wrongly, strategically thinking way beforehand. So I think right now the question is that although he didn't receive that much of the votes, 0.5% as far as I remember, perhaps most of those votes will go to Kılıçdaroğlu, the main opposition. And for Sinan Ogan, the question remains to be seen. I think he doesn't have a full force over his electorate because, number one, he's a new face in the Turkish political system. Number two, he does not represent any party organization. Is
he a new face in the Turkish political system? I mean, he spent years at the MHP.
Well, right? as a sort of putting his candidacy for the leadership is the new thing. Although he served in the MHP, like Nationalist Bloc, he was a member of that party. The question is that how much of his votes will follow him. My prediction is that perhaps 60% of his followers would go to Erdogan, and then the remaining would go either as sort of not voting or go to Kılıçdaroğlu.
So
in any event, it's a moral support for Erdogan.
Sure. So, Yücel, although voter turnout was relatively high, statistics reveal that around 9 million eligible voters did not cast a ballot. Is this likely to change in the second round?
I think this is a general observation that in all second round elections, the turnout would be less than the previous one. So we can expect, as a general fact, we can expect that there would be at least 8 or 9% reduction from the first round turnout. But I think that's my prediction that on behalf of opposition, the turnout would be even higher, considering that there is a great disappointment on behalf of the opposition parties and opposition candidate. So that's why still they are trying to increase the excitement of their supporters. But I just think that the time would not be enough to increase this excitement on behalf of opposition. So that's why the turnout would be a bit more than the decrease in the turnout on behalf of the opposition would be higher than President Erdogan's supporters.
So, Zuhal, turnout for overseas Turkish voters was also a record high in the first round, but far lower than in Türkiye. Why do you think the Turkish citizens living abroad are less interested in Turkey's elections?
When we look at this number, actually, it's not so few. We cannot treat it as a very low level. We know that the ballot boxes are in several cities, and sometimes we are talking about a big continent. So people need to travel from one city to another one, and it needs time and money and the many other, let's say, the necessities we can see for going to the ballot boxes. So that can be a kind of barrier in front of the voting. But what I see that the turnout level is really high, even among the citizens abroad. When we remember all this, let's say, the campaign period, it was so obvious that especially the so politically motivated people were eager to go to these ballot boxes in any, let's say, the price. So I don't think that it is so low. It is the importance actually in the results, and we know that the citizens abroad can be sensitive about several issues related with their daily life or political preferences. And they are highly motivated, I think. And when we look at the people who didn't cast their votes, this is also related with maybe their political choices. This is also a very important criteria. Because as we discussed before, the many people may have some the hesitations to vote any candidate, so they may have a different variation of a political profile, maybe not fit directly automatically to this the candidate's profile.
Yes.
So this is also very important. So and in the second round, in runoff, most probably, the so politically motivated people will be eager to go and vote, because, as I explained before, it needs the payments, so the spendings, so then the time. So
Yes.
maybe the number will decrease, but it will not change, I think, the result.
So, Mehmet Akif, let's move a little towards the West. Greeks also headed to the polls on Sunday. The incumbent Prime Minister Mitsotakis won heavily against his closest challenger, but failed to secure an outright majority in parliament. What do you make of the results? And were Greek voters keeping an eye on the Turkish elections and deciding who would they vote?
Well, it's also very interesting results. Mitsotakis obviously was expecting a sort of a relaxed one-party rule, but he was able to secure 41%. Under the current rules, he was expected to score about 45%. As far as I know, he rejected the mandate. He is leaning towards another elections, perhaps towards the end of June, to secure a landslide victory as a one-party rule, because at that time, I think a new regulation will be under use, which is giving somewhere between 20 to 50 bonus seats to the winning party. I think that at that time it's supposed to be 37%. So New Democratic Party of Mitsotakis was able to score a victory, but in order to, I think he needed 161 seats. Right now, -5 seats he was able to get. Syriza got 20% of the votes, and then the PASOK alliance with Kına was about 11%. So I think in our previous system, parliamentary system, the turn will continue. I think the president will give the mandate to Syriza chair, and then perhaps after that.
Yes, but I was more asking about, I mean, do you have the sense that Greek voters keeping an eye on the Turkish elections and deciding who they would vote? Because do you see any similarities?
Well, in terms of similarities, the intention for re-election, I think that's a similarity to 2015 elections in Turkey. But one thing, with Mitsotakis used the enmity towards Turkey on every single occasion, but until his campaign. During his campaign, he didn't use Turkey as a sort of a boxing point so that he would collect more votes at that level. But up to that point, he made sure that he used Turkish enmity in Greek society. He sort of filled in at every single occasion he could, even if it's unnecessary. Well, in almost all cases, it's unnecessary, but they never hesitate to use that.
So, Yücel, as Mehmet Akif mentioned, Prime Minister Mitsotakis is likely to go for fresh elections in June. So how will his second term impact relations with Turkey moving forward?
Yeah, as Mehmet Akif said, Mitsotakis, anticipated even further seats in the parliament, but unfortunately, on behalf of him, is not possible. These kind of things are quite usual in Greek politics, that the parties are using the relations with Turkey as a campaign, elements. That happened again until the earthquake disaster in Turkey. We have seen significant use of Turkey as an element in the election campaign by Mitsotakis. So it really, proves to be quite successful, on the political parties using Turkey and Turkey animosities or security threat, in a sense. So until the earthquake disaster, and almost a new era started, there's still very good relations between two countries at the moment. There are mild statements, supportive statements. I just assume that, after the elections in both countries, if Mitsotakis secured to establish a government as a result of this process, maybe after the second round, and I think there are some reasons to believe that two countries would start a new process of dialogue, considering that President Erdogan said there is a great chance to start a fresh, negotiation process. And as far as I can see, United States is also supporting that both countries could start a new dialogue period. So I just assume that Mitsotakis being the prime minister after the elections and Erdogan continues, then I think they would be in a position to start a new process of dialogue as they promised, in a sense. As far as there is a support from other countries, especially the United States, I'm quite optimistic. Although, I don't believe that they would be in a position to settle any single of disputes at the moment. But I think I'm just hopeful that they would be able to start a process of dialogue which has been, cut off after some time.
So, Zuhal, do you see any similarities between the Turkish and Greek voters in how they seemed more comfortable with familiarity than change?
And actually, if you remember the beginning of the election campaign, Turkey was talking about the importance of the determination of the date according to the election date of Turkey. So this is tightly connected. We need to underline that because they were feeding a kind of feeling of insecurity deriving from the Turkish threat. So we need to underline that this government is the right-wing government, and we see in Greek elections there is a wind of the rising nationalist votes. So the rising nationalism and this nationalist discourse in Turkey created, of course, a kind of the supporting element for the Greek elections. I mean, for the existing the right-wing the leadership in Greece. Because they were underlining again and again the importance of this Turkey's position in the Eastern Mediterranean and other Greek-Turkish rivalries. So this is the first similarity, I think. Another one can be related with the continuation of the same government. So we know that the last 2-3 years were full of the tension and the very the difficult, the tough language against each other. Now the earthquake diplomacy and the disaster diplomacy created a humanitarian the base for both the leadership And we know that both profile of leadership in both countries have a liberal tendency. This liberal tendency can create a kind of cooperation base for the countries, but I need to underline that these problems are not easy to settle down by a personal, let's say, the effort. They are really deep and very difficult problems to solve by any government. So we may start from one point. Maybe this is the important thing is the dialogue, creation of a dialogue, and decrease of the tension. But I see that the next term will be full of the frozen conflicts, maybe a lower level of tension, but maybe it is early to expect a very big step to solve the problem.
All right, Zuhal, Mehmet Akif, and Yücel, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Ayşe Süberker. If you've got any comments, follow us and tweet us at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.